Hello, by now you should know what Bidify is, and this video is the first of a series of discussions around the UX of the platform. It's between myself, Cryptosi, and Jeff Robertson, who is an absolute genius when it comes to UX, and he's also a educator in a university in the United States. What else do I need to tell them?
Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a video. And please enjoy.
Please enjoy. Recording.
Yeah, I am recording just in. All right, good. I see two record buttons, one by you and one by me now.
Yeah.
There.
So we got backups. Redundant.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, hell, I might keep this for my own thing and post it to Vimeo. Just have one of those things in case someone ever asks about it. If that's okay with you. Just
that's fine. That's fine, because then I think this whole process is probably quite interesting to people. I think people would find it interesting. So especially students on your course, because it's putting it together, in a live project. So
and it's funny you bring that up, because actually I'm going to be taking a lot of like what I talk about in my class and kind of talking about it here. I'm assuming I can kind of go through my thoughts. That's what you want to see right now, and give you somewhat of a presentation. So I did a bunch of like what I would just call like lit review, looking for stuff about the UX of designing auctions, designing bids, stuff like that. And I honestly didn't find that much. And so unlike, I would say, when it comes to e-commerce, where there's like a ton of information out there about like shopping cart abandonment, I didn't find as much like hard information on like, here's some very specific tips about making bidding. It doesn't mean that there isn't out there. It's just like I didn't come across it with like my normal avenues of kind of like looking through these different publishing entities that do stuff for like UX and stuff. So what I figured I could do is kind of do what I've been doing with my class, which is like taking things that I know about UX, like good principles and stuff like that, and talking about how that could be applicable to the design of cryptocurrency-based systems, or anything kind of dealing with that. And in this case, also looking at the actions of bidding, like what that means for like how to design a good user experience for like bidding. So does that work for you if I can just kind of go through that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
So I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see if that works. All right, are you able to see a screen that has like a keynote presentation?
Yep. Yeah, I got you.
Okay, fantastic. So before I bring this up, I'm going to bring up a website just real fast to show you. Anytime you ever have any questions about like usability, user research, feel free to come to me, of course, and ask. But the Nielsen Norman Group is like, they're the OGs of UX, right? They have been talking about good usability practices for a long time, and the vast majority of their information is like research based. Like they look into it, they do actual studies to find out the things that they talk about. And one of the things that they've put forward, and they put it forward a while ago, but they always kind of like update them, is this list of 10 usability heuristics for user interface design. That's what I'm going to talk about on this call. But I just want to show it to you, if you ever want to try to find this someplace, just go to the Nielsen Norman Group and search for it. But I'm going to talk about these 10 usability heuristics, what they mean, and kind of my thoughts on how they get applied to the world of cryptocurrency, and also here the concepts of like bidding.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm going to bring up here is some slides from my course, and the course that I've been teaching at the University of Maryland is for their Human-Computer Interaction Master's Program. So I've got about seven master's students right now. I had 10 last year. I'm teaching it all online, which is nuts, like not going into a classroom. But I guess I'm kind of used to it at this point. But we meet every week, and I've been talking about how to go about analyzing emerging technologies. Like, what are some ways, some methodologies that you can use to go out and do like a UX analysis of an emerging technology. And the emerging technology that we focus on is that of blockchain. I refer to it as world computers because of the way that I present to them and help them kind of understand the inner workings of everything that's going on. I talk to them about like these decentralized world computers that can, keep track of information. But that's the technology that we've been looking at. And so what I want to go through here are some slides that focus on the UX analysis methodology of applying these 10 usability heuristics, like looking at what those heuristics are and like how they can be applied. And so I'm just going to start in from here. Where was I going? All right, so I'm gonna give a little context here. I like using kind of visual diagrams to get my students and other people kind of like on the same page with me, so I have like something to point to and talk about. And so I've been using this model to explain to them like my kind of view on user experience, and that is user experience is all about providing the path of least resistance between yourself as a user or other users and the goals that they're trying to accomplish. And so I think about this in a very linear way, like literally like a physical path between the user and the goal that they're trying to accomplish. And so I talk to students about these different entities. Like, you have the user, you want to know everything about the user. You want to know like different attributes that could be influencing how they would want to interact with an interface, right? And there's a lot about users that kind of feed into that. And so I guess the first thing that I would want to bring up here is like, always know the user that you're interacting with or are designing for, and try to accommodate other users that might be trying to use a system that they never really used before. And the crypto world is definitely something very new and different to a lot of people. So unless you are a very specific user type, it could be confusing. And so you're going to want to take into account people who might not be that tech savvy. If you have desires for new users to the space to be able to adopt your platform and use it. Anyway, so you think about the user, you think about the goals that they're trying to accomplish, and you think about that path that's in between them, and you want to think about how the technology that they're leveraging can affect that path, right? Depending on what kind of phone you're using, on what kind of computer you're using, whatever kind of technology you might be using, that technology will influence how you go about accomplishing the goal that you're trying to accomplish. Other things influencing all of that would be like the outside environment, right? And how different things going on in the world around you can really influence someone's path as they go about accomplishing it to accomplish a goal. And so I have my kids, think about things always from this perspective, like, let's just travel down this pathway. If I'm the user or someone else is a user, what are the things that they have to go through in order to accomplish this goal? And one of the things that I have taught them to use to go about analyzing that is like, when you look at the design of something, you can leverage something called a heuristic evaluation to understand how that looks, how the interface, how well it's designed as a user interacts with it as they go down this path by using a heuristic evaluation. Hopefully that makes sense what I just said. Yeah. So as a user, goes about accomplishing their goals, a heuristic evaluation, its focus is on the design of the interface that they're using. Now, this is in conjunction to another method, task analysis, the analysis of how a user goes about accomplishing something. And so what I'm showing here is the idea of like, you think about this path that exists between a user and their objectives or goals that they're trying to accomplish. Task analysis focuses on the actions of that user. Those are the kinds of things that you would want to be picking up in a task analysis, whereas the heuristic evaluation focuses on the design of the interface that they are using while accomplishing those tasks in order to accomplish that goal. Mm-hmm. And so what are heuristics? There are a set of rule of thumbs or principles. And so the ones that we talked about in class, and there's other ones out there, and there might be more specific ones depending on different fields, right? You could have more specific ones, but the ones that we look at are these 10 usability heuristics that are set forth by the Nielsen-Norman group. And so I just want to walk through them real quickly with you and talk about them. The first one is visibility of system status. And the design should always keep users informed about what is going on through appropriate feedback within a reasonable amount of time. And so feedback can come in a lot of different ways. Like it can be visual feedback, it can be audio feedback, it can be haptic feedback. You know, you can do something on an iPhone, or I should just say iPhones, but you know, a lot of these smartphones, and the phone will vibrate, right? You'll touch something and it'll vibrate, because what that's doing is providing you feedback about the system. You've pushed something and we see that you've pushed it, and we're reacting and letting you know that we know that we've received that by giving you this haptic feedback, or there could be some sort of visual thing. So for anything that you're allowing the user to do, you're going to want to make sure that you provide them with good visibility into system status. Now, when it comes to bidding, like there are a lot of things that could go into that. And I do plan on actually creating a spreadsheet. Let me get out of this real fast for you. Where is it? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these heuristics and I'm going to write up some notes on how they would apply to the different personas using your platform. And by persona, what I mean is an archetype. This is a term that we use in user experience and usability design. But a persona represents a specific archetype. So you could come up with different personas of the users that would be leveraging your platform. And this gives you a way to kind of like relate back to that person as you're designing. You can think about, oh, how would this person go about accomplishing this? Would they be able to find this button? Would they know what this label means? Like, it gives you some sort of reference point. And so I think it'd be good for you guys to kind of establish a couple personas that you could work with. And two main flavors there would be like what it looks like for a person to set an item for sale, and what does it look like for somebody who is trying to buy or bid on that item for sale. These are like the two main personas, but you could then break this down even further if you wanted to. Going back to what I was saying about how you can have people who are very familiar with the space, but then you could also have people who are kind of new to it and still a little wary about things. Like, how do you accommodate them so that they don't feel unwelcome when trying to leverage your technology? So what I plan on doing is kind of writing down some more specific details outside of what I will talk about today in here for you, so that you can kind of like go back and reference it. All right, so visibility system status. So like, for instance, I don't know all the parameters, or remember all the parameters you were saying about the platform and how bidding will take place, the time frames and stuff like that. But you're going to want to show people certain bits of information, like when is this bid going to end? Like, some of this might sound obvious, but this is what I'm talking about with visibility and system status. When is the bid over? How long do you have before you have to get a bid in? Has your bid been accepted? Right? All that kind of stuff. Like, these are things that you would want to make sure that you provide a person matching the persona of someone trying to buy or try to bid on something. Whereas if you are the person posting, like, you're going to want to have visibility system status. Has this thing posted, right? Has it been accepted by the world computer? This is something that like I still have trouble with sometimes. Like, has it been gone through yet? Like, has the back end accepted this and confirmed it and become like it's part of it for permanent now, because sometimes, like, I've noticed that interfaces that I've been using can be deceptive. And we talked about known origin and how you go about publishing a photo and you think you're minting it, but you're not minting it. You're paying for them to present it. And if someone happens to buy it, then it gets minted, right? So here's a situation where, like, I was not being provided good visibility into the system status. This thing I thought I had minted, I had not minted it. And so that's one kind of example here of how visibility system status has been problematic in this new space. Is this the kind of stuff that you're looking for? I'm hoping.
Yes, this is perfect, because this what this is making me think about is when a person does go to list an item, there will be a period of time whilst the transaction is going through. Mm-hmm. Now, I've seen some systems which will have a little sign which turns to pending, and then that sign may turn orange, and then there's a little timer. It's not really a timer. It's more like an egg timer. Remember the old school egg timers, which just spins around and around. And then what will happen is with MetaMask is it will ping up in the bottom right corner and it will say your transaction has completed, or it may say your transaction has failed. But that will ping up, and that's kind of like a separate system to Bidify, but the two will have to work together. And I'm
Absolutely.
just thinking something like a pending notification would be really good to have, because if there's not one, then you're in the dark, and you could be in the dark for a few minutes not knowing what's happening. So even not just for it to say pending, even for it to say something like your transaction is on a queue in the Ethereum blockchain waiting to be processed, it may take about such and such amount of time. And that kind of information can all be gathered and can be presented on screen. So
Fantastic.
yeah,
And that actually gets into one of the principles that are in this set of 10. It talks about the need for help and documentation. A lot of these concepts overlap, you know what I mean? But here, like giving that information is good visibility into system status, but you also have information there explaining how things just work in general. So that's good help and documentation. And I think that's number 10.
So that was definitely something I hadn't considered, which we may have overlooked, which is, this is the reason why we've been trying to get you to give us this advice, basically.
Yeah, I immediately want to like start kind of like designing things out, but I know that's not kind of the dynamic that is needed quite yet. But not being able to find things online about like bidding, I figured the best way to go about doing this is just kind of giving you these principles to think about, and also helping you maybe develop some personas to think about. And then providing just my general thoughts on like how these heuristics could be problematic or need to be applied to these given people.
And I can immediately, as you said, that I can immediately think of two personas, which will probably be the main two. Somebody from the art side of NFTs, and then someone from the tech side of NFTs. And I think those are going to be two personas who are probably be quite different in how they approach using the system. Even how they would read the messages would be quite
interesting.
Different. Yeah,
very interesting. I'd like to hear more about that at some point.
Yeah,
just to understand how you see the different kind of archetypes throughout the crypto space.
Yeah, well, you may have the same message, but if it's not specific enough, the tech guys will not read it the same way as the art guys, who can take things and try to interpret them a little bit better, whereas the tech guys kind of try to filter it. But there's a slight difference in the way that the two personas will even approach the language that is used. So because I get to work with both types of people, and I have to change the way I speak when I'm speaking to the developers, because I'll say something and it's because I've said it and I've not used the technically correct words. They'll be like, well, Cryptosia, that makes no sense. I was like, well, of course it does. Of course it does. So so those are the two things that sprung to mind when you said about personas.
Awesome. I'm glad it's resonating with you. Like that makes me happy. So when it comes to the second heuristic here, and let me know if you don't want me to do. You want me to keep going with these things?
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know how long you had.
Mate, I've got all the time in the world.
Okay.
If the way I see it is, I feel I've spoken to you about this before. The UX part of crypto projects is always overlooked. It's always overlooked. You end up just being lucky if you have a front end designer who actually cares about UX, or if you've got a developer who actually cares about you, end up just being lucky. So I think it's important, especially when you've got front facing applications that are not aimed at nerds. I think it's important that we go over these things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm hoping that more front-end developers enter the space soon. People with like UX backgrounds and stuff. At least that's what I'm, hoping some of the kids in like my class will start doing. Like they'll see the need for it and like try to make a career move out of it.
Yeah. Well, now it's becoming more mainstream. It's more likely. But like I say, if you go on there's developer discords, there's like areas where developers hang out, and they'll have little areas for for every single type of niche within programming, this language, that language, this, that, the other, and there'll be nothing there for UX, nothing at all.
Wow.
There's not even anything there for UI. It's kind of just a case of let's make it work, and then if the regular idiots can't figure it out, then that's their problem. They just don't get to
Yeah.
use it, and that's not what I want to do.
Gotta get over that chasm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Moving from the innovators and the early adopters and getting it to the early majority to adopt. You got to get past that proverbial chasm.
Yeah,
It's like a book written about it.
I feel we're still there. I think we're still in the chasm. Yeah.
All right. The second principle is match between system and real world, and this is defined as the design should speak the user's language. Use words, phrases, and concepts familiar to the user rather than internal jargon. This is literally kind of like what we were just talking about. And follow real world conventions, making information appear in a natural and logical order. And so this is a big issue, like we were just talking about, with people entering the space. Like all of a sudden you're hit with all these new terms that you don't know. And nor, in my opinion, are there very well set words and terms for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever watched the video of that study that I did on the usability of staking wallets back in the summer of 2019, when we got like what was it, 5 or 6 participants?
Yeah.
No, it was more than that. It was like 10 participants. Yeah. And had them interact with these different staking wallets to see if they could go about accomplishing staking. And these new concepts, the private key, the wallet, the passphrase, the seed phrase, the password, right? What are the relationships of all these things? And more often than not, I found that these different wallets had different words for different things. They would, some would say seed phrase, some would say recovery phrase, some would say passphrase. Some people will call a password a passphrase. And it really threw off people because they don't understand that terminology. And so this is going to be a big one. Like, how do you take something so new that requires these kind of new behaviors, these new understandings, and label them and explain them in terms that a new person is able to understand, more importantly, in a way that they can understand the importance of what they're doing? Because you get into our usability heuristic number 3, which is, why are we not getting there? User control and freedom. Users often perform actions by mistake. They need a clearly marked emergency exit to leave the unwanted action without having to go through an extended process. Oh, I forgot my passphrase. Oh, there's no undo button. Sorry. Like you can't recover from some things in this new world. And so this is where some of these heuristics start to have problems. And I actually have an additional principle that I don't know. I'm not trying to posit it, as like some new principle out there. It's just like in my mind, it seems like it's needed when we're talking about this particular space. And I call it user accountability design. That you can't design a completely error-free world with this because of the nature of how it works, unless you have a centralized party taking care of it for you. Like, Coinbase, you have an account with them, you have a password that if you forget your password, you can just ask Coinbase what your password is, right? They're taking care of the stuff for you. But for people who are purchasing, NFTs and bidding on stuff, like they don't have that kind of situation if they accidentally send something to the wrong place, right? So how do you explain to them in their action in some sort of like documentation, or with the way that you kind of corral them through buttons to do things? How do you kind of create something that has this, what I would refer to as like this user accountability design, explaining to them the accountability that is on them, explaining to them the burden of custody. Like if you want to have custody of your assets, like there's a burden to that you have this responsibility, and it's not like you can say, hey bank, you have my money, bank, and if they somehow messed up, they're going to be liable to figure out your funds. Where here, if you mess it up, like you're the one that's liable for it and nobody else. You can't get out of it. So how do you design something like that so that they understand? And I mean, this is something that people will, the second they get it, like it's going to always be there. People will be probably more, what's the word I'm looking for? cautious as they go about doing stuff, because they know that there are like no, I can't undo that kind of action situations. There's more of those in this kind of world than they're used to.
Yeah.
I think about this a lot. Like when I talk about the usability, it's all about like the path of least resistance and how that can be applied to so many other things on the internet that we know today, and how easy it is to post something, like how easy it is to just do anything. And the downside of all that is like we've lost our sense of accountability.
Yeah.
And so if you have a system now where there is accountability, is that going to change people's kind of like expectations of need things to kind of like work faster? I don't know. Does that make sense where I was
Yeah.
going with that? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was like making
Yeah.
connections and
This
you're just like, I
this
don't see
one,
the dots.
no, I can see it. This one, I can see it as a user comes onto the platform. They want to purchase an NFT. MetaMask is going to say to them, how much fees do you want to pay to make this transaction go through? A user may not know what fees do. They may
Oh
not know
God.
the
Yeah.
importance of fees. They're not going to know anything
Yes.
about that. They'll choose the cheapest option, and they will end up sitting there for days.
Yep.
Now, they're going to need an emergency exit, and I'm going to have to find a way to explain to them you had better mark high fees and pay the ridiculously high amount that Ethereum wants to charge you just for placing the bid. Because if you choose low, it just won't go through, or it won't go through before the auction ends. And have maybe some kind of guide or something to help them to clear that bid from, or clear that transaction from the most frequently used wallets. So yeah, that
Interesting.
will be the main one, with freedom and user control and clearly marked emergency exits that people will need to use.
You know, we could write a book about all this stuff. Like no one else is talking about this.
No.
You know, like we literally could write a book and try to sell it for the things that you got to look out for. Like this concept you just talked about right there is like, I had not really thought about that too much, but you're absolutely right. Like just understanding the concept of time and how fees, like, I mean, that took me a while to wrap my mind around. How do you explain that to somebody instantly?
Yeah, and when you do explain it to somebody, you're probably not best served by giving them the technically correct answer. You probably want to explain it to them in a way that relates to real life. So tell them that they are in a queue, and if they pay more money, they get to jump the queue. That's probably the best way.
Ooh,
to
I
tell
like
them.
that. I could see a little diagram and everything that
Yeah,
like comes up. Like, you want to get ahead of all these
yeah,
people,
yeah.
gotta pay a fee, man.
Then you got to pay. Yeah, you got to pay. If you want to, otherwise you're going to be sitting outside in the queue in the rain with all the other schmucks. You
I
can't get
tell
into
my
the club.
I tell my students that like you got to think of world computers as like a jukebox. You have to pay to play, and if you want your song to get bumped up, like to higher up, like you got to pay more money to the DJ and get it in faster.
Yeah. But that makes no sense to people who haven't used crypto before, or haven't used Ethereum before, because that's not a problem that exists on other networks. So
Exactly.
it'll be that's something. Yeah, I think that's the main one that I'm worried about, or that's the thing that sprung to mind, an emergency exit.
Excellent. Like I said, man, we could write a book about this, and we probably should. Probably should.
Yeah.
All right, number 4, consistency and standards. Users should not have to wonder whether different words, situations, or actions mean the same thing, follow platform and industry conventions. And so here is taking what we just talked about it and kind of extrapolating it a little bit. So if you're learning something for the first time, like you got to have things explained to you in a certain way so that you recognize it, right? And you can understand it and interpret it. This is why I like the concept of using the term private key, because a key is something physical. People can wrap their mind around a physical key. Like only you have that key. If you lose that key, like, you know what I mean? Like you don't get a new key. I like the concept of, you know, wallets, like wallet addresses, because you can explain it like a physical thing. Think about how the post office works. I want to send something to Cryptosi. I need his what? I need his address. Write his address down. Boop. And I pay a fee and it gets sent to Cryptosi, though with the mail in the United States right now, God knows when you would see it. But it's like, you know what I mean? Like whoever came up with this stuff was already had these terms figured out to be explained, to have that explained to you, like in a way that you can understand in a physical sense.
But at the same time, your wallet address is also known as your public key.
Public key, yeah.
which then means nothing to other people because is it a key or is it an address? Because it's
yeah, definitely.
with something like this, what would I really be aiming for crypto conventions, or would I be aiming for e-commerce conventions more, like the
It's a really
standards that have
interesting
been
point.
set? Yeah, standards that have been set on e-commerce. Would I be aiming for them more than the crypto ones?
I think so. And I remember when I would look at Augur, like the Augur was the prediction, and this was recorded. Hell, I think I did it for you. You asked me to do it. I was very concerned about the way that they were explaining how to place a bid or to bet on something. And I just like could not wrap my mind around because it was not providing something in a very simple way for me to kind of get how it worked.
Yeah.
But maybe they were using, because if I were to go to like a racetrack, like for dogs or horses, what do you race where you are? What animal do
Yeah,
you race?
both dogs and
Both.
horses. Yeah.
I know if you had some like crazy animal
No,
like a
no.
fox race or
No,
something.
we don't know. I think we just kill foxes. I don't think we
Okay.
race them. We just go and kill them for sport.
Go ahead. Oh man.
Yeah, Brits. Yeah, we're a kind bunch. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So if I went to a race, whether it was foxes or horses or dogs or whatnot, like, and they were trying to explain to me the betting odds and how odds work and how you bet, like there's a formality to that and a methodology to that that's in that industry. I don't understand it because I don't gamble. But maybe the Augur platform was using those terminology that like, I just didn't know because I'm not like someone who goes out and gambles a lot.
Okay.
And so there's a good and bad to like using those industry terms because that does get, it goes back to that whole match between system and real world scenario. I mean, heuristic for somebody who's new. I don't understand these terms. However, if I am an expert gambler, I get these terms right away. Like they all make sense to me. And so that's where the personas come into play is like, you got to think about these two different people and how that would affect each one of them.
Yeah.
Consistency and standards breaks itself down into two different categories. There is internal and external, meaning when you talk about external, it should be used across because it's like, when you look at all the platforms out there, is there some kind of set way that something is done, right? If you go to a gas station or a petrol station, there's a certain way that you interact with it, and you'd find that at every station, right? You're not going to have all of a sudden this new design about how to put gas in your car. They're going to follow some kind of industry standard. Whereas an internal set of consistency and standards would be something that is repeated throughout the site itself. So when it comes to like your personal site, as long as you're using the same things within the site, that's good consistency standards for within. And it's even better if those things match what everybody else is doing, because when people come to your site, they will have this mental model already established based on the other things that they've done that they bring to you.
Okay. What I'm thinking with that is sometimes I guess you get standards for the same things which may vary across geographical areas. As you were saying about the gambling thing, I was thinking sometimes in America you'll say, like in baseball, I heard them say, oh, this guy, he pitches a 300, and I have no idea what that means. If he said he hits a lot or he misses a lot, I probably would understand that better. So I'm thinking maybe this type of thing, consistency and standards, is kind of pushing me towards keeping things as simple as possible and not trying to go for the niche standards of real, I guess, expert e-commerce platforms that may have different standards, which I don't know yet. So, so yeah, this is quite a worrisome one, I guess.
For here though, I would say like, if I were to take this one and apply it to you guys, I would go look at how eBay and any other bidding site does things, and just anything that doesn't necessarily involve the cryptocurrency aspect of it, like just use what they got.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that could fall down here is just the interactions, I guess, with like how MetaMask works and the information that it provides you, because it's going to have its own set of consistency and standards and information in the language that it provides people. Sorry, I digress a little bit on that one.
Well, not really, because I guess what we could do is we could have something like a eBay, but perhaps a little information button with a mouse over, and when you mouse over it, it could possibly pop up an image which kind of describes what you expect to see from MetaMask. But then the problem then being that the customer may not be using MetaMask; they may be using another wallet. So it's quite difficult, because then if they are using another wallet, then you can't really have that kind of support for every different type of wallet, because there are literally hundreds now. Most people do use MetaMask though. So
yeah,
this one's tough because crypto doesn't have its own standards, and
it doesn't have it yet. Yeah,
that's where I think the problem will be. I'm not that much worried about the e-commerce portion, because I think the answer to that is just to keep it simple. But the crypto part,
yeah, it's hard. My mind is like going down this whole tangent about like how this stuff needs it. Like, I would love to do some sort of like research project where we go and interview and talk to anybody that knows anything about usability, kind of like, you know what I mean, at any small part. Somebody who could help us document what we need to kind of look at in order to establish some form of consistency and standards.
Yeah.
Like people who like understand the world enough to be like, this is something that needs to be addressed. This needs to be addressed. How do we do this? How is this going to be done? Find out what those things are and like try to come up with like I said, we could write a book, you know what I mean? Some sort of like documentation, be like, this is how it could be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if the Nielsen Norman group would be interested in that.
That would be good, because I feel that there is always that appeal to authority, even within cryptocurrency, whereby if we did set a set of standards, there's the old joke that if you think there's the standards that there are not standard enough, we need just one standard and not all these other people doing their own. You end up with, instead of having 100 different people doing it a different way, you've got 101 different people doing it 101 different ways. So
yeah,
I think if it was someone like the Nielsen group, then I feel like it probably would gather more traction and it would be a little bit more respected. Then you get projects probably like Cardano that would look to that and they would say, okay, well, these are what the academics say, and we take our lead from the academics, and then the big projects like that do it. Then it possibly would filter down a little bit more.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got my mind going, Cryptosi. Like my mind is just racing now with ideas on. All right, next one. 5, error prevention. So this is another toughie. Good error messaging is important, but the best designs carefully prevent problems from occurring in the first place, either eliminating error-prone conditions or check for them and present users with a confirmation option before they commit to the action. So having them understand this messaging is like, you see what I'm saying? Kind of like the problem there. Like, how do you know what an error message is when you don't really understand what's going on to begin with?
Yeah. So this would be with possibly bidding with the wrong type of coin, or bidding with the wrong type of fee, possibly bidding on auctions that have already ended. There's quite a few errors that a person could make.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about a good one when we look at these wallets in that study. One thing that I really like was how Pivx, or Piv. What is the proper way of saying it? Is it Pivx or Piv?
Pivx, yeah, Pivx. I say Pivx, but I guess that's because I'm English. Because the Americans generally say Pivx.
Pivx, yeah. When you put in a wallet address that was not at least a known wallet address, it would come up red.
Yeah.
Don't send this. You know what I mean? We know that at least within this category, it's not right. And I thought that was good error prevention.
Yeah.
A good use of that. But what you're saying about like not using the wrong kind of
Yeah.
coin, that kind of thing. Same thing. Like if you happen to have that selected, warning, like don't do it.
Yeah. That can only be a warning. Because there's no way to physically stop someone from making that mistake. And if they
Yeah.
do make that mistake and they send the wrong coin to the contract, or they send the wrong coin to bid on. So for example, if the listing, or if the auction wants dollars and then you send euros, it's going to accept the euros. We haven't written it into the contract that if you send the wrong thing, it will send it back. We haven't written that in. So maybe that's something that, yeah.
Ooh.
Maybe
Right.
that's something that we need
That's
to
a beautiful
consider.
thing you just thought of right there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because I don't really understand the nature of contracts. Because I'm not a developer, I don't program. I have my own mental model of how this all works, but like,
Well, I could
I don't really
explain it
know
to
what goes
you.
into it.
It's quite simple, right? With Ethereum, you've got multiple different tokens. So you've got multiple different cryptocurrencies all residing on the same blockchain. So as you were saying about PivX would tell you if an address is wrong, with Ethereum, the address could be correct, but you're just sending the wrong thing. So I'm expecting you to send euros, and I'm saying, okay, well, once you've sent me euros, then you sent me my 100 euros, and this is the computer talking now, the smart contract. You sent me my 100 euros. I'm now going to send you something back. But instead of you sending me 100 euros, you sent me $110, which is the same amount of value, but I'm a computer. I'm not waiting for dollars. So you've sent me those dollars, and I'm like, oh, okay, dollars, thanks. And I just hold them, and I send you nothing. Because you still haven't sent me the euros that you were supposed to send me. And this is
wow.
yeah, this is a bit of a problem for all. I've personally lost money this way,
Oh man.
slightly differently, but I sent Bitcoin Cash to a Bitcoin address, and it's gone. It was a very expensive error, and my wallet didn't tell me that the address was wrong, because the addressing system on both of those two networks is exactly the same. So that's something that I think it's feasible. But I definitely won't add it in this first release. I won't add it in the MVP. Oops, my screen's gone. Are you still there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, my screen's just gone funny. Oh, what's happening there? Right, okay, let's see who's causing these problems. I close some of these windows. My Zoom is, oh, there we go. That's better. Right. Yeah, so I'd lost my trail of thought there.
Oh, you're just talking about how smart contracts work and how
Yeah.
sometimes they're not programmed to take into account certain kind of errors.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's what I was saying. We probably won't do it in the MVP, but I think it's feasible to have a check that says, in fact, I don't think it is, to be honest with you. I don't think it is. Actually, no, of course it is. Yeah, it's feasible to check. Okay, I've received something, and the auction ID to which this money relates doesn't match the type of money that the auction ID is asking for. So therefore, I will reject this. I will not accept this thing that you're sending me. I think that's possible. So instead of having to send it back, which would cost money, I think you would be able to just say, I'm not accepting it. I think a smart contract can do that, but I'm not entirely sure. So we'll have to speak to the developer about that. Yeah.
What Kayaba is?
Yeah. No, it's he's my advisor, so he'll definitely be able to tell me if I can do it or not. But then I'll have to speak to the developer. I'll speak to Kayaba first, because yeah, he understands it better than I do, and he'll be able to say what the best way to do it is.
Interesting.
And I'll get someone to do it. Yeah.
Again, these are all things like I truly that need to be documented and brought forth. And I would love, I mean, in my mind, like this is that pipe dream, is somehow getting the Nielsen Norman group and what's his, I can never pronounce his name. Ethereum dude, Balatic,
Oh, Vitalik.
Vitalik, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's talked about the issue of usability before, right?
Mhm.
With it, and I would love to somehow, is there some sort of joint venture between the two of these entities that could be like, we need this stuff
I,
explored
I,
and
I
documented.
think I think you'd be better off going with Cardano because they're the guys that really seem to look to the academics for
Huh?
the way they
Interesting.
build. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
they really look to the academics. And this is the problem that we had when I first saw your content. Like I was blown away. I was like, this is exactly what we need. And then you made a series of videos, and we took them to projects, and it was very rare. I think it was only Arc. I think Arc was the only project that after you'd made the video, they reached out to me and they said like, this was really good. We found this really helpful.
No shit, really?
Yeah, I'm sure I told you. Yeah, this
Oh,
is
that's
the
right. You did tell me about that. You
yeah.
did tell me about
They
that.
came. They came and they said this is really helpful. This is the type of stuff that is worth a lot. This is worth a lot of money to us. This can make our product a lot better. But a lot of the other projects that we done it for, they didn't really even understand the value behind.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just it's a tough one because there's a lot of, I don't know. I don't want to say ego, but
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I've also worked in product development, for a long time, and you get to the point in like where you get out of the UX, um, what's the word, idealism,
yeah,
and realize like sometimes you just got to let the builders build something and let them get to a certain point and then start refining it. You know what I mean? Like there's just
yeah.
like
I,
there's
I
like
I feel like in crypto the builders have gone wild, and I think they've been I think they've been let off the leash a little bit too much and for too long. I
they're
think
building us a new world. It's exciting for them.
yeah,
But yeah, absolutely. There are certain things that they need to start paying attention to with the usability. Otherwise, like they're never going to cross that chasm.
yeah, yeah.
All right, let's get on to number 6 here. Recognition rather than recall. So minimize the user's memory load by making elements, actions, and options visible. The user should not have to remember information from one part of the interface to another. Information required to use the design, e.g. field labels or menu items, and should be visible or easily retrievable when needed. So the one thing that comes to mind when I see this one with crypto is like remembering your seed phrase. But I don't see how that would be really applicable to your particular project. And the reason I bring it up is simply because people like, who the hell's going to remember that, right?
Yeah.
You most likely write it down. But I saw some cool things. I think ARC actually had one in there because we looked at that in our usability study, where you could choose words, like you had to put in, oh, we want to know like 3 of your seed words, like what's 3, 6, and 12, right?
Mhm.
And you could put them in, but they gave you options to choose one. So you could find yours out of 3
Mhm.
rather than having to type it in. And I thought that that was kind of interesting because it helped people with recognition rather than having to totally recall it.
Yeah.
But recognition rather than recall is another way you can kind of look at it, is just like you walking down the street and you see somebody that you recognize and you don't remember for the life of you what their name is. You know them, but you can't remember their name. And so like in our brain, we have, very specific areas that are designated to facial recognition. I think it's called the fusiform gyrus, the fusiform, something like that. And it lights up when you see faces. So we have a dedicated area to help us with recognition. But to remember someone's name is a different process for the brain. And so that can take a little bit longer and often can be error prone.
Yeah.
So if you can design something where people can go off of recognition rather than having to recall it, it's a lot better.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm wondering, like, maybe when it comes to crypto, sometimes crypto, like there's information that you do have to kind of carry on to another interface or screen. One thing that I think is, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but wallet addresses, right?
Mhm.
The ability to, you want to send, you're on an interface and you want to buy something. You're in an e-commerce payment gateway that accepts cryptocurrency, and you need to send, $10 in Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Here's the information. Great. My Bitcoin wallet is over here on a different computer, right? I used to have a computer here, so I point to it, imagining that it's still there. But it's over
Right.
here. I need to get that information here
Yep.
to there.
Yep.
How do I do that? Well, QR codes are fantastic, but I mean, if you're
Yep.
dealing with a desktop, unless you have a webcam, and then you got to pick the fucking monitor up to do it, it's not easy to use. So I like designs, and this is very standard now, where you can just very easily copy that address, copy the clipboard, and then you can put it into like an iMessage or something and send it to yourself if you're using Macs. But you find your own path to get it there. But once you plug it in, you have to do that kind of check. At least I would imagine most people do. You double check. Is that right? And how do you recognize a wallet address? Like, what do you look for? I'm curious.
First 4 characters, and then the last 4.
Yep, me too. I would imagine that seems pretty standard, and they seem to be doing that with like on dApps when you go and connect.
They kind of cut out the middle, don't they?
Yeah, like this is what people are looking for. It's funny how things just naturally kind of evolve.
Yeah.
But that is, in my mind, recognition rather than recall, because you just recognize these first letters. That becomes easy to recall. You don't even have to remember them all the time. Sometimes you see them and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember it's right now that I see it, but like I may not have been able to recall what those things are. So you're setting up a system where recognition is able to be used rather than recall to double check that wallet address.
I think another part of that would have probably been keeping some parts of the information consistent. So possibly not removing I don't know, the item price, the auction end time, not removing that information off screen when a person tries to enter into another part where they want to make a bid, or maybe when they're listing, not removing things off screen. So I guess that would be a...
Absolutely. Because I feel like maybe, this actually, if you think about it, mechanically speaking, it's the same underlying principles that you would see in a shopping cart. And so that's a big one with shopping cart, is like you have to, as you walk a user through the process, like there's some bits of information that need to always be present. As you go from one screen to another that you're referencing for whatever reason. And so I could see like what you're saying, moving through a bidding process, if there is a situation where you're moving from one screen to another, we would have to identify what that information would need to be that you would want to pass along through.
Some things it will be important to keep them consistent.
Flexibility and efficiency of use. Shortcuts hidden from novice users may speed up the interaction for the expert users, such that the design can cater to both inexperienced and experienced users, allowing users to tailor frequent actions. And so this is an interesting one, because we talked about these two different users, the person who's very tech savvy versus the other person who might not be. And we've talked about it a lot in the sense of like messaging, at least, not necessarily the execution of an action. Because this here deals more so with the idea of, a good example would be like, you want to do something in a movie editing program. This complex set of actions that you do repetitively. Well, you could set up a macros outside of the computer, or you could have probably some sort of feature within the video editing software where you could set up a combined series of actions and you put a hotkey on it, right? Like you just do control whatever. That is more so what this is referring to, is like making it easier for experienced users to get things done. Or at least providing them with like some sort of shortcut way to do it.
Like for us, I guess something simple for us would be like a button that just says place minimum bid now, and it calculates what the minimum bid should be. You click it, and then your MetaMask will pop up and say, do you want to send this much money? And the amount will be in there automatically. And it can also pick out the ERC20 as well. They can also pick what type of currency. And that, I guess, that would be something that would be really efficient. So if you're experienced, you can just click that.
So this would pick out the things for you by default, but then you could also adjust them.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So effectively, it'll be like a quick bid button. Be like a one-click bid button. You just click it.
Gotcha.
Everything you have to do is confirm the transaction after that.
Kind of like the buy it now button on Amazon?
Kind of, but not really, because it doesn't guarantee that you will win.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It just guarantees that you'll bid.
Your
So,
bid, you will be
yeah.
placed, but you don't have to go through the same mumbo jumbo for like.
Exactly. You won't have to then go into your wallet and say, okay, I need to use this particular token. I need to put in this particular amount. You wouldn't have to do all that. You would just click it, and then you would be the lead bidder after you've clicked it. And so I think that might be a good feature to have.
Yeah, that sounds great. That does. And we'll
bid.
put this in. Hopefully, you'll remember all this stuff. And
that's why I recorded it.
yes, and feel free to like fill out that I'll send you the link to the file,
yes,
the document that I have, just so that we can start developing those personas.
Yep.
All right. 2 more to go. Well, 3 more to go. Aesthetic and minimalist design. Interfaces should not contain information which is irrelevant or rarely needed. Every extra unit of information in an interface competes with the relevant units of information and diminishes their relative visibility. And so something I remember learning in grad school that I always think about when I read this is training, like artificial intelligence, training robots and things like that to be able to identify an object. Like I want to pick up this glass. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to teach it how to identify like what is not the glass. You know what I mean? Through training, like, and so every little thing that's in the room is something that is a possible like false target.
Yeah.
For it. It's just like, and human beings operate in a similar way. When like you're trying to find information, the more bits of information that are out there, like visually, it's the more distracting. And I think this also, you know, we talk about how these heuristics overlap in different ways. The what was it called? Match between system real world use like language that people understand. When you have an interface that is filled with like jargon and long strings, you know, alphanumeric strings and stuff like that, that looks very complex and technical, right? This is problematic for the non-technical people because it kind of also starts to violate this, where it's like, you got all this information doesn't make sense to you to begin with. It's now just clutter that is preventing you from being able to make some sort of informed decision on what's going on or determine what you need to look for.
Yeah. And I when I'm thinking of auction sites, I feel like that's where, well, for me anyway, that's where I feel eBay has the edge over Amazon in that with eBay, I always feel a little bit more at ease when I'm on the website because there's just less going on. There's less things, there's less options. There's just here's the price. Seller, do you want to buy it or don't you? So
I've never used Amazon's auction stuff. I need to take a look at that.
I don't think they have an actual auction site, but they're just their website. Even for Buy It Now, it's
gotcha.
I still find it. I only go on there because the price is generally better. And stuff back in. But I just find it. I find it a little bit more difficult to use. And,
interesting.
I feel a little bit less.
And it's got too much information on it. Just distracting.
Too much. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, this is something that I've always try to keep it as minimal as possible.
Yeah, so number 9 here, help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. Error messages should be expressed in plain language. No error codes precisely indicate the problem and constructively suggest a solution. So this gets into error prevention, but now it's like, if you happen to come into an error, make sure that they're able to get out of that. There's another big problem like with like sending stuff, but where the smart contract like could come into play in helping people not do things or recover from something.
The smart contract,
like you're saying, like if someone accidentally sends something that's the wrong thing, it could send it back to you.
Yes, but I kind of feel like by that point it's too late. I kind of feel like the website is the real interface before the smart contract. So I'd like the website to say, don't do that. And the website to also say, okay, you've just done blah, blah, blah. The smart contract is telling me you've done blah, blah, blah. This is how you fix it.
Excellent point. You're absolutely right. That's a better way that this would be applied. You accidentally send something to something. It comes back from the smart contract, but on the screen, it explains to you why.
Yes.
Because otherwise, like, what the hell just happened? Why did this get sent back?
Exactly. And the smart contract will give you an answer, like, but the smart contract answer will be uh, uh, some kind of error code, which is just a bunch of numbers, which is not going to mean anything to anybody, including me. So it's yeah, it will be, that will be something that the website will have to handle. And I guess it will be a case of what is the error, and considering considering how the website then um, interprets those errors and then displays the information. So yeah, okay,
Interesting.
yeah, there we go. And it even says it here, doesn't it? No error codes. So yeah, expressed in plain language, no error codes precisely indicate a problem and constructively suggest a solution. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, so
we
if
could.
you, yeah, if you sent the wrong money, then I guess the solution would be too bad. Get a job, I suppose. But
Start
otherwise,
over.
yeah,
Damn.
yeah.
I'm,
But yeah, generally, there is generally ways to diagnose and recover from errors. But yeah, this is good actually, because these are not things that I had considered.
I mean, I know I've said this like 15,000 times now, but like we literally, I think that we need to approach the Nielsen Norman group, and we could just do a seminar where we discuss the issues of each one of these things in the world of cryptocurrency. Like that might be something that they would really like because it gives it context for them. Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the examples of these problems when it comes to the crypto world?
Yeah.
Um,
And
I might write my contacts there like tonight and be like, look,
there are plenty of examples as well for each one of these heuristics. There are so many examples.
wow,
This one with
wow.
no error codes. The amount of error codes I see all the time, and it's just, what the hell does that mean?
Damn.
And then you have to go to Google. Generally, you can find out, but
Yeah.
you know, I've been in crypto for years and years and years, and error codes still mean nothing to me, and I still see them. So
I don't think I interact with it enough to like, I want to be at your level. And I've been telling myself, I just like, I mean, I'm going to be frank with it. I think that you've got like a lot more crypto to play with than I do. And so you're able to go out and do,
yeah, I'm full time, aren't I? So
well, I mean,
definitely
let's
have the
put it,
time.
you've been full time for longer and therefore have acquired more. And therefore like, because you know the world computers, you got to pay to play. You're able to play more with it than I've been able to, and for longer. And I want to get to your level. I really do. You've probably seen so many cool things that like I've just not come across or considered, and just want to be able to relay that information to these students so that they have a clue. Because shit, like
probably complete this last.
we shall. Let's get the last one in.
Let's get this last one in.
So help and documentation is best if the system doesn't need any additional explanation. However, it may be necessary to provide documentation to help users understand how to complete their tasks. And I honestly think, I mean, help and documentation, they break it down into two parts. You kind of have this proactive and then you have the reactive. Proactive would be any kind of like onboarding, any kind of like, you've seen this when applications come in for this first time. Let's take a tour, and it points out where things are. Whereas reactive is more so, it's like the help section, the FAQs, like a place that people can go to get information that they need to find while they're doing something. And I feel that a big way to solve this within new interfaces with cryptocurrency, based applications, applications that deal with blockchain, excuse me, is those question mark things. This is new to me. Like, let me just click on this little, something simple. It's not the most appealing thing to have. Then you don't have to have them there for, forever. Just like during this kind of period of time where the technology is still very nascent and people are trying to learn, having like little help buttons next to things to kind of explain anything that might be confusing, in terms that help them better understand what's going on. So that's a very reactive way. Because a lot of times, even the proactive stuff, like when you have like onboarding, people click right through it. They only really want to go find out more information when they come to their first roadblock.
Yeah.
So what I will do is I will share this document that I showed you earlier with you. Where the hell did it go? And we can maybe start thinking about personas, and you want to make another column for like a third one, we can just have at it. And we'll just maybe start talking about some of the characteristics of different kinds of personas that would be interacting with your application, and then start listing some of the things to take into consideration as they abide by these 10 heuristics for each one of those personas. And that will help kind of establish some guidelines for the front end development to go by.
Brilliant. Yes. Yes. Excellent.
Cool.
Excellent. Yeah. So then, yeah, we can go through each one. I can have the 2 personas. Can I think of a third? I'm going to try to think of a third.
I mean, you might have two. You might have like 2 main ones, and then have flavors for each one of them. Like I said, I think a big one is like the person who is new and the person who is not, who's very experienced and not experienced. But even within those, you can have different flavorings of people, or someone who kind of represents. You get what I'm saying. Anyway, sorry. So I'll get working on that. Putting in what I have so far. What I would love also is just like, now that you've kind of seen some of these heuristics, as you go through and see usability issues, if you could start like taking screenshots like we talked about, because I think like that would be you know what I mean? Like you're just gathering kind of clues along the way that could be repurposed for something bigger later on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Cool, man.
I'll start doing that. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure speaking to you.
So much for your time. I'm going to try and get this back to you as soon as possible, and possibly we may even have a first draft for you to have a look at.
Okay.
Which would have probably have taken none of these things into account. I'm going to share this video with our front end designer Luis. I'll share this with him, and then we'll get on to trying to make sure that we're abiding by these rules, these commandments.
The commandments.
Yeah, and we should hopefully make sure we're not making some of the same mistakes that other projects in the sector are making.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Of course.
I'll be in touch. We'll reconvene and try and do this again.
All right, buddy. Sounds good. Have a good evening.
Thanks so much. Yeah, you take care.